Hi, everybody. We'll just introduce the board. Just want to quickly pick up on something that Darren just said there about confidence in articulation and also language. And I think this is where the journal comes in really nicely, hopefully, in terms of building the discourse, building the confidence in articulating practice as research through various things around, for example, case studying people's work. And obviously the journal is text-based, so it is language at this stage. So yeah, confidence, language, articulation, in order to build the discipline or the disciplines which we might work with or serve. Okay, Pratap, you're the chair of the board officially, so did you want to, I don't know.
Yeah, thanks so much, Gren. I'm very happy that you started, because the first thing I wanted to do was just to say a very, very warm welcome to Paramita Payne and Craig Batty, our new co-editors. And I'd mentioned in an earlier session that we had a really positive process. Jill Daniels, who's with us today as well, along with about half a dozen editorial board members, put together that process, and we had many applicants, and what emerged from it is this new co-editing structure. So a very warm welcome to you. And the first thing I was going to do was just to give a little bit of space if either of you wanted to say something about arriving into the editorship, and particularly we've just produced our editorial collectively written, mapping out the direction, and that's been a super interesting process and a dialogic process. It's also raised questions for people on the board about how we most productively can interact, and so that's really healthy. There's a lot of discussion underway and to be had. So to me, that's a really good sign that we're dealing with the kind of granular detail of what it means to try and progress these ideas in practice. But enough from me, probably. Paramita and Craig, do you want to just say a little bit about your vision, if you like, or your work as co-editors?
Yes, and I'll first begin by thanking everyone here, and especially the Board of Media Practice and Education and my co-editor, Craig Batty. Guys, it's excellent working with each and every one of you, and it's truly a privilege to know each and every one of you. For Media Practice, the journal, within the current research landscape, we truly believe that this journal serves as a very important platform and venue for research and voices that seek to decolonize, democratize, and diversify concepts of academic publishing, and in the process, influence academic research to foster greater globalization and participation. It does this in two ways that perhaps on the surface may seem pretty simple. Firstly, media practice fulfills a very crucial gap by ensuring that voices from the practice side also get equal play in research arenas that often seem extremely Western in approach and often rather hyper-focused on normative values of media industries and influences. Second, the journal's strengths are its naturally international approach to the study of media practice, its inclusion of traditionally marginalized groups like LGBT communities, and its wonderful methodological diversity, which highlights participatory action research as well as surveys and other quantitative approaches. It is these strengths that my co-editor and I are seeking to leverage within the journal. Craig has recently put together an excellent editorial which exemplifies these values. Over to you, Craig.
also known as, I put together the Google document from which we collectively worked. And everyone had to ask for access 5 times, but we'll not go there. I'm just going to put a little thing in the chat, which is just a little excerpt from the current, the about to be published editorial, which is coming out in the next issue, which is 22.2. So this is 22 years, by the way. This is the 22nd year of the journal, which is pretty phenomenal when you think about it. Well, actually, technically, yeah, halfway through the 22nd year. So this is just something the reason I'm putting this in there, this is something that will obviously ring true to many people, will sound perhaps obvious, but I just think it's really important to put this in there, because one of the things that has come up in the last little while is that perhaps over the last few years, the journal has slightly, I don't know, drifted, shifted, etc., etc. And there's been a lot of different types of work in the journal, including, for example, a lot of work around education, hence the new education name, media practice and education. There's also been perhaps some more media studies type works published in the journal. And also there's been quite a lot of stuff around journalism, which is a media practice, of course, but there's different ways of looking at journalism, whether it's communication studies or whether it's journalism practice, research, etc., etc. So we just thought it was really useful to almost remind, I guess, the readership and potential contributors that what the journal really is about, and just kind of really pull back more to the media practice research aspect of the journal. Remembering that the journal used to be called the Journal of Media Practice up until 4 or 5 years ago. So so that little thing you can see in that chat there is part of the new editorial that's coming out in the next week or so. It's part of issue 22.2. And so just there's that kind of refreshing the almost the agenda and the ethos of the journal, which is around media practice research. Now that can take many forms, many methods, many approaches, many, it could be undergraduate stuff, it could be doctoral stuff, it could be whatever. But at the core of it is media practice. So I just thought I'd put that there just to remind you what we're doing and what we're trying to do. I might just see whether Jill wants to say anything, and then we can have a bit more of a discussion across the panel before we maybe go out to panel, to Zoom, what are you, participants, to see if you've got anything you want to ask us around submissions, etc. Jill, did you want to add anything?
I just wanted to say that I think the pandemic has had quite a major effect on the journal, in the sense that we used to have, I think the editorial board would meet twice a year, once with the symposium, and very few people would be able to come. So since we've had the pandemic and now we're all on Zoom, etc., it's actually enabled us to have a much more fruitful and I think collaborative conversation in the editorial board than we ever had before. And I've really been finding that very positive. I'm very delighted to have Craig and Paro as co-editors who seem to be working together amazingly well. Obviously, when you kind of say you're going to collaborate, you have to hope that they will find their way to be able to do that. So we are seeing that they're collaborating incredibly well. We don't know how they're doing it, but that's fine. And so I think that point that we were all was a point of self-evaluation, I think, looking at who we are, not really going into the history of the journal particularly, but we were looking at the present quite a lot, about what we've become over the last few years. And thinking about, and that's something I would also like to add, that we actually think about what our editorial board is, as well as having this new kind of message, if you like, and readjustment. I think that's going to be a process. And I think that process will be a conversation between people who want to contact us and who may be interested in coming on the board as well. So it's started, it's not something that's complete yet. So I'm very delighted that these things are happening.
Thanks, Craig. And so we are a bit of a step change, but the thing that I wanted to really emphasize now is that it is an evolution. And I just really wanted to express my gratitude really to, I'm particularly thinking of Julian McDougall, whose vision from JMP to MPE we've are developing. And of course that really worked through his partnership with the chair of our editorial board, outgoing, recently stepped down. I'm very glad he's in the room, Eric Knudsen. And of course, Cahal was leading us before that. So I see it very much as an evolution. And I think what's likely to happen now, if we do this well, is that we'll have some productive friction. So there are particular strong emphases. Shweta, for example, in one of the earlier sessions was talking about how we have to absolutely make sure we embody and act out these aspirations to greater inclusivity and so on. We make those sorts of noises almost as a reflex. It's kind of the culture we swim in. At the same time, those disparities are very substantial, and the way we interpret our response to that will be different. And some people will find some of the references, for example, to Black Lives Matter inspiring, and some of the people will find them problematic. And that's a conversation that we're well placed to try and have. So I guess that's what I would really like to see, is that we continue with our commitment to expanding what praxis is, but with a really close attention to how we can learn from our differences rather than anything else. So I just wanted to express my appreciation to all the board, which is a big board, and a board that's renewing itself at the moment. And if anyone's interested in joining us, please let us know. And also how much that I have learned, and I think I can speak on behalf of others, from the leadership of the people that I've mentioned, and also the generation before them.
Yeah, that's great. Just picking up on one of the things you said there about the frictions, and I think, the journals, we often see journals as a place for, just to go back to what Eric was saying, publishing, getting publications, outputs, ticking boxes, getting points for academic prizes. But it's also a really useful and important place for discussion and for sharing. And importantly, you would think it's obvious, but for thinking. So thinking through ideas, thinking through things. And I think there was a comment by someone who I don't think is in the Zoom room, but who, I can't quite remember where the comment was, somewhere, maybe I dreamt it, but it was something around, there's a danger that in some kind of journals, and potentially this one, that there's a particular approach that might come into writing papers, but we need to make sure that we don't lose the thinking and the philosophy and the concepts and the ideas, and just putting things forward rather than just purely reporting on studies that were done about a particular thing. And I think that's a really important thing for this kind of journal, for arts and humanities journals, in broadly speaking, hopefully philosophy journals if they still exist. But for this journal in particular, I think thinking through, and it is still a developing area in many ways, even though 22 years later you would think that media practice as research would be pretty agreed upon. But as we know, it's still evolving, and people have different views and languages, etc. So I think, from my point of view, and Para might have something to add here, I would be really interested in people who are interested to put something in, put articles in there that really provoke us to think about things and think through, and really, and not just, I don't know what the word is, bland, but, like just kind of tick box kind of studies, methodology off the shelf type things. We're really interested in pushing, even the idea of what is knowledge, what does it look like, what does media practice look like, in et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely. And just to take off from what Craig mentioned, we are also working towards creating spaces of for articles and essays of 3,000 to 4,000 words that just focus on single questions of this kind. So we really would like to hear from people who might be interested to contribute to that dialogue by trying to use these spaces more effectively. Please do not hesitate to get in touch. I'll be posting our contact details in the chat.
Thanks, Para. Any other comments from the board? I mean, we could obviously open up to questions. You might be interested in submission processes if you haven't done that before, but does anybody have anything else to add before we open ourselves to something?
I just one thought, which is there are such fantastic opportunities in this kind of step change digitally, and I'm wondering whether, you know, with ScreenWorks, with others, we might have occasional meetings, editorial meetings that are just open. Anyone can come and anyone can say what they want to, and have a faster way of responding to some of the evolutions of practice. And also, thank you. I won't say any names, but I had 2 people inquire about joining the editorial board during this conversation. So that's a great sign. We are going to publish a full process and invite applications, as well as approach people that I think will help us develop our diversity. So look out for that.
So just quickly on, you know, what's I think I've used the word the system quite a few times this week, but what is currently in the system? We've got the 22.2 coming out in the next week or so. We've got probably enough articles for the next 1, maybe almost 2 issues, which will take us to the end of the year. There's 4 issues a year typically, but we are obviously always looking for more works. So if you have anything which may be related to what you've presented this week or other things, you know, please do put stuff in. Obviously, it might take a while to kind of get reviews and revisions and all that kind of stuff, but always on the lookout for new work. So please do, you know, put stuff in there. Does anybody have any questions, comments? Oh, there's a raised hand. Ivan.
Yes, thank you. I actually asked the question in the chat, but I think it got lost in translation. I wanted to know, what is your policy about open access? I'm asking that because in France now we have to publish open access papers. At least it has to be open access in a certain amount of time, usually around 1 year. So what is your policy about it?
We are not open access just yet because our publishers are not open access. So I do realize it's a disadvantage. And, you know, writers do ask us because it is becoming a requirement in Europe. But for now, we are not open access. But we will certainly open up dialogue with the publisher to do what you just suggested, Ivan, that, you know, maybe giving and leaving certain articles open access for a year or so. But at this point, we do have 50 free reprints for new articles that are published, which is an option given to authors to share with other people. But that's an important question, and I'm glad you raised it.
And I think sometimes there are options to pay for gold access. I would always, I mean, there's different views on this, of course, but I would always say that's just a terrible thing because we're given these articles for free anyway. I don't know how it works in Europe or UK anymore. See, I said them differently because it's not Europe. But what happens over here is we talk a lot about green access. Green access meaning university repositories having the preprint version available for free, which is legal. And that is the way that we encourage colleagues here to get their work open access in inverted commas. But I understand that it's not quite the same. It's not the final version. It hasn't got the pagination, etc. But yeah, you don't pay $1,000 or £1,000 or whatever for gold access.
Yeah.
Are they listening? The publisher, don't pay. Any other questions?
Could I just respond a little bit more fully to Ivan's point? Is it Ivan or Ivan, or did I pronounce it?
It's Ivan, but you can say Ivan, Ivan. I'm used to any version of it.
Thanks, Ivan. Yes. There's a, I have to be careful what I, my experience on the current REF panel, REF 2021, is that there's more and more push for open access. That's a really healthy thing, I think, but it's one thing for a panel like that to be pushing in that direction. It's another thing for how, you know, publishers will manage their business models around that. And we're kind of caught between, aren't we? That democratic impulse that I think most of us would absolutely support. But also their structures are not yet fully there or even born to be able to do this. So there are workarounds, aren't there, that some of us use at the moment. So I know some of my stuff I make sure is posted on I think ResearchGate or academia.edu or something where it's free for interested colleagues in our community to get there, but it's not directly downloadable in the way that a full open access would be. And this is a problem that I think a lot of us, I think is one of the ways in which, you know, us joining up together better makes a Screenworks and many ripples beyond that. I think we could have a little bit more collective influence if we were able to make the case jointly, because we, as often with academics, we have a lot more power than we think. Because if we're not providing this stuff that then gets in some sense commodified, doesn't it? If we say no, we'd like to do it on these terms, but are able to do that in a more collective and paced way, then I think we might be able to help the open access movement go a bit faster.
And there are compromises, you know, like you can have an embargo for a year or two and then open it to the general public without paying for it. Or I mean, there are lots of business models emerging these days.
True.
But I know it's not your decision to make. I was just asking to generate some debate, I guess.
There are lots of issues that we don't have access to change. And one of those was the lack of payment to the editors, for example, which came up when we were advertising and was quite widely disseminated on social media that, you know, why was it acceptable for people to give their services free? And the assumption is that they're going to be paid somehow through the institutions that they work for. But the thing is, I think things are changing. As you know, like, particularly in the West, this might not be the case elsewhere, but higher education is shrinking. And, you know, it's not people are becoming independent researchers, independent filmmakers. They don't have the institutions behind them. And we can't assume, I think, going forward that, I hate saying that phrase, but actually everybody who will be contributing and producing research is actually going to be employed. Plus, we're all living a bit longer.
It was an important criticism, wasn't it, that we had from one person in particular saying, you know, who do you guys think you are? But advertising for an editor or editors, you're not offering any payment. What kind of process? You know, they're really good points. So we end up with the situation we have, where who could afford to do this without the support, backing and typically being embedded in an institution.
I didn't know you had that comment. So that was interesting. Actually, this does remind me of another thing, and I know there's a chat question there, but something which I've emailed the editorial board about twice. We're looking for a really, really good image for the cover, for a continuous cover. And I, you know, being the writer in the room, I would have thought that maybe some of the filmmaking types would have had a really nice image. But if anybody's got a really, really beautiful image that represents Media Practice Education Journal that is copyright free, or that's your image that you're willing to share, please send it to myself and or Paro. The emails in the chat there, because we're really looking for a really beautiful new image, and the chaos of trying to find something and, you know, getting all those Shutterstock and all this stuff, and it's almost embarrassing. So if anyone's got a beautiful image in high quality, whatever, DPI, whatever, please send us it. And it generally can't have people in there unless they've been agreed to be identified, but that if it's your image, you might, because it might be your, I don't know, your partner or something. If you're making a film with family, please let us know and send us it. There is a question about the special issue. Now, I might have to hand over to someone else to kind of clarify that in terms of the call for papers or the curation of, you know, papers. Does anybody want to say something about a potential special issue coming out of this symposium?
Shall I come in on that and refer to Roy as well? So traditionally, the special issue has been guest edited by the hosts of the symposium. So Roy and Darren and Ben and I are going to meet next week and probably target people who have presented that seem to have potential to make really good papers. We've had so many fantastic submissions. I don't think there's going to be any trouble populating a special issue. So that's usually the process, but obviously ultimately that's overseen by our editors, with the hosts as guest editors.
And I would say that Power and I really look forward to getting you into the system to use all that automated stuff. So if you're keen for that, absolutely.
I'm very much looking forward to the process, actually, and working with you guys to kind of hone the papers, and I hope we can do something really interesting with some of the contributions, and help kind of put together a really challenging and again provoking special issue. There's lots to talk about, clearly.
Yeah.
There is, and I think if you're as going to be as innovative as this symposium has been, Craig and Para, then we'd be looking at a journal that maybe you have to unfold differently. The paper comes out, turn it around, just all kinds of different ways in which this can be engaged with online and off.
Idea of a pop-out journal, that could be quite good.
Yes, you know, it's a bit like the Babadook or something like, I don't know, just an idea maybe.
I love how you're assuming that they still print it. No, they do. You know, 5 copies. There was that special issue a few years ago. I forgot the number. Maybe it was 18, which was from was it Coventry? Jonathan Shaw, the one that was really about different forms of writing, and it was actually designed very differently. But I know that took a long time to get approved. Some of you might have been in there. In fact, I'm not sure.
It was called the disruptive issue, Craig.
That's right.
It was meant to disrupt, and it sure did.
That set the bar quite high then, hasn't it, really? So now it has to be an ultra disruptive issue.
What about the conforming issue? as a form of disruption? Any other questions around? I guess another thing as well is, you know, peer reviewing. I mean, we actively look for people, well, obviously for peer reviewing, trying to widen the net. and get people who are really, you know, able and willing to review in their kind of field or their specialization. So maybe we should take a screenshot power of the names, and we can just suddenly hit them up through the little search function in the system. Send them some peer reviews. Yeah, but it is becoming an issue, peer reviewing. Like, a lot of people are busy, tired, stressed. You know, a lot of people who you might just call on to do two or 3 a year are going, oh, I really haven't got time and I'm a bit over it, which is, I think the sector is feeling that. I don't know if anybody's got that experience, but.
Well, thanks, Neil and Roy, that for your offers. Really appreciate that. I mean, just it's an opportunity, I guess, for us on the board to be really honest as well. And just something that I've noticed is the gap between the expertise around the table in the editorial board and the particular interests there and the kinds of things that are submitted. And that gap has grown. So we sometimes in this odd position of a board that really want to develop X, Y, and Z. And what we're getting is a bit of X, but mostly B and C. So I think that's a really interesting situation to look at how to redevelop and recultivate some of the areas of practice that people on the board know and love, but where the journal has become more recognized sometimes as in areas which have surprised us. You know, that all of that's very welcome, but I think there's a kind of rethinking and rebalancing to do.
I think that's a great idea, Pratap, because you might not be aware, but the Arts and Humanities Research Council are reviewing the way they do peer reviews. Because one of the challenges they have is that it's the same old universities getting most of the money. And, you know, they're suspecting two things are at work. One is the nature of the calls that they're putting out, favoring certain institutions. And the other is the peer review system itself is favoring certain institutions, you know, and particularly if you have a particular pool of people who are of a particular mindset, who themselves come from particular institutions that favor certain subjects, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you have the perfect storm of a bubble. So I think it'll be a very interesting area for you to have a look at, and whether there are creative ways of thinking about, because if you truly want diversity, then that's one area you have to look at.
Thanks, Eric.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk about the symposium for next year?
Yes, please, if that's okay with you guys. I think one of the things that we've discussed so far, certainly between Mark and myself, is the idea of bringing the practice network and the journal closer together in our future endeavours, which is something I'm very open to. And we will be discussing and issuing a call for expressions of interest in due course over the next couple of weeks. I believe we've already settled on 4 themes or so that the journal is very keen on promoting. And I think between us, if we shape this up, we can put this out as a call for an expression of interests. And then we can start the planning cycle for 2022.
It's been absolutely, astounding, impressive week, really. I haven't been able to get to as much as I would like, but some of it is asynchronous, so I'm looking forward to catching up on things I've missed. But I've been really very impressed how Solent have really led the way in creating a fantastically rich offer, and a lot more kind of connections between peoples and practices, and it's just been held in a really impressive way.
Yeah, I'd like to second that. I've managed to drop into quite a few things, not so much the participant stuff.
It's kind of come out. It's very much to use the well-worn phrase of impact. come out of lots of experiments over since the lockdown, and of playing with this and doing events online. And actually, if I hadn't had the last year of doing that, I wouldn't have even tried to do this. So and a lot of those things have been just totally, we are actually running web events in my front room and webcasting, you know. So it's been a lot of experimenting and learning about this. And actually, I think that lots of people across the higher education, I can see a shift away from those early conferences that were like 6, 7, 8 months ago, where they were literally replicating online. I can see other people shift to this kind of mode of asynchronous and synchronous, and making sure the synchronous stuff is really interactive. And I think that's really, again, another really brilliant side effect of something that's been quite dreadful. So I'm glad that we've produced something that it's worked. It has been a bit of an experiment, and I think when I was sort of trying to persuade people that we should do the open space thing, a lot of people going, "What? He's insane." But it worked, actually, and it was a risk that was worth taking, and I definitely want to do that again. I can't wait until we get another chance to do it, actually. So, but thank you for the opportunity to play, and for the trust that the people who've been helping us do it have given in letting me have reign to my more disruptive tendencies.
Well, you've set a very, very high bar, Roy, and I know it's been a huge amount of work. So in your typically understated, modest way, you haven't really said that, but I know how much work you've been putting in for about 18 months, probably, possibly longer, in shaping the ideas, let alone the platforms. I mean, it may be we can convince you to either record or write something about how to do this, because lots of people are going to want to make sure that when they're not just sort of trying to dump into an online space what we do when we can meet, but actually look at digital pedagogy and look at the opportunities of how we can come in and out of connect with conversations.
And that's the thing, is the conversations have felt really connected. I mean, in a way that I haven't really felt at other events, and certainly haven't really felt at actual real conferences. And I'm going to quote the guy who came up with the open space idea, and he said that the best bit about conferences is the coffee breaks. And actually what we've had is an extended coffee break for two days, and it's been absolutely fruitful, so fruitful. And it feels sometimes that when you go to real conferences, is those, I just have to go back to this now, and I have to sit and listen, and I've just met this person, I need to have a conversation with them, or I want to have a conversation with that person, and we've opened up space for that possibility, I think. And the fact is, and we learned this when we did our Making Waves Film Festival award ceremony. We did it online, and normally we'd do that in a building in Portsmouth, and there would be just a few local people there, but we were able to engage with people from all over the world. We had filmmakers who'd submitted films from all over in the room with us, and that's exactly what's happened here, is that right now there are people from a number of different continents engaged in this conversation, and this fluidity of this online space is immensely powerful.
It sounds like you never want to go to a conference in New York or Miami or Sydney again, which is wonderful. You know, you're never going to take up those trips.
Well, there's a conference in San Diego I'd really like to go to, but I'm not sure the university will pay for it. So,
yeah. More chat is coming through. Any other comments, questions, ideas, live pitching of abstracts for papers you want to put in?
I'd be really interested in anyone's reflections back to us as a board and as editors, you know, what can we do better? How would you like to see the next step for this journal and this partnership?
We're perfect.
Could I?
It's Friday afternoon. It's 20 to 5.
Yeah.
And you're asking a big question.
I am, but I was impressed actually by the exchange that Charlotte Crofts had with Agnieszka over a bad review, a peer review to something she submitted, and the fact that Charlotte could kind of impromptu sort of invite a comment on that, and that for both parties the disturbance that they navigated resulted in something good, and they were able to talk kind of more openly as a community about how we sort that out between each other. I thought that was a real sign of maturity, and that we can do that in this space. So that encouraged me to ask a difficult question, but you know,
throw something in there then. I think that one of the things that I've become aware of recently, and it's partly related to the decolonizing debate, and I've got a call for expressions of interest for an edited book at the moment. It's really challenging trying to work out how you push that call outside of the bubble. How do you engage with those voices in countries from all around the world and other universities? You know, just posting the call out onto JISC mail didn't seem to tick that box. And I think actually what you have to do is you actually have to go out and search for those people. And that maybe if the journal wants to frame a certain kind of content, that's perhaps what you need to do. You need to go out and find those people and approach them and invite them, rather than kind of sitting back and waiting for submissions. Because actually to break through that bubble, we have to kind of, it's the same with our Facebook feed. If you want to break through that bubble, you have to curate it, which means actively intervening in the algorithm.
Setting up a group, and we're hoping that we can work with Screenworks actually, and maybe Max Practice as well, I don't know, to be doing that, to be more proactive, to going out. But I mean, that's not set up yet, so that will be coming. But I think that's a really good way, taking that from your point.
But question, is there, just totally off the top of my head, somewhere an island in the Pacific somewhere where there's an academic who's got a really great idea? Do they know about Screenworks? Do they know about media practice and education? Do they know about Mexico? Do they know about JISC mail? That to me is the challenge, is that how you engage with those people who don't know, who are not part of this group. You know, I don't think you could describe this as a clique, but if you kind of take that global position, it's a kind of a closed community. And isn't that part of what the decolonizing agenda is about, is breaking down those walls? How you do that, I don't know.
There's also the language issue. I remember going to Visible Evidence in Germany. It was my first one. I was going as a spectator to see what it was like, maybe, I don't know, 12, 14 years ago. It was in Germany. It was entirely in English, and very little, none of it was translated. And I thought, this is not inclusive, and I did write about that. And I think there has been change in that way from more international based conferences like Visible Evidence to alter that. But the fact is that the journal at the moment is an English language journal, and this assumption that academic language is always in English. I don't know what you kind of do to break that down, but it seems a barrier to me.
Jill, I agree so much. And Roy, really great questions that you've just raised. So For the journal in particular, we do have social media outreach efforts, our Twitter, our Facebook page, but engagement on both is again in English, and it's becoming rather limited. Digital Journalism, the journal, recently started publishing their newsletters in Arabic as well as in English. And they are also coming out with a Chinese version of their newsletter. So maybe this is something that we could perhaps explore. We could begin by first producing a newsletter and then seeing how many languages we could translate that in.
Sounds like a good start, really. I mean, just thinking about China, I mean, there must be a huge number of people who would love to contribute, would have something interesting to say that could get involved, but they probably don't even know about the journal.
I think one of the challenges is that, you know, in terms of creative practice research in particular, it is very, very isolated around UK, Australia, New Zealand, Canada. It's still very, very Western. So I think there's time, it will take time, I think, to build, but there's opportunity, of course. So there might be pockets of people doing it here and there around different countries, but it's not the critical mass. But maybe the journal could be the place where they, you know, find that place to start talking about their particular nation's approach or something.
Have we drawn to a close, do you think?
Darren's nodding.
I think so. I'm just going back to something you said a little while ago. I think it was yesterday, Roy, about the whole nature of these open forums is kind of when you're done, you're done. And
yeah, when it's done, it's done. So
yeah,
and the people who come are the right people.
Yeah.
And whatever happens is what happens. So there are our open space principles again.